Good afternoon. I'm Nikita Anand. Now, when I was approached to speak at this particular TEDx event, and I was informed of the topic, Minds Wide Open, and of course its associated implications, I would imagine that the general audience assumption would be a talk by me that's centered around probably hard-hitting concepts, something larger than life. Now, while I agree with that line of thought, that's not what I will be doing here today, because I'm going to keep it very simple. Now, what happens is that, when we talk about any ideology or any principle for that matter, there is no complex formula, right, that can be waved with a magic wand. But there is a little bit of fairy dust that I can sprinkle, and that's what I aim to do here today. This fairy dust that I'm talking about is a very simple mental switch that you, me, anyone and everyone can make. But what that will do is that can effectuate a change in your perception and consequently your impression. Because at the end of the day, it is how you perceive things, how you perceive people, how you perceive the world at large, which then drives the impression that you want to make. And therefore, it forms the basis of your thought process and your daily actions. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'd like to begin by asking all of you a rather innocuous question. When was the last time you said, I can't? So when was the last time you responded to a question that was posed to you with a response that said, I can't? Now, for someone, it might be this morning. For someone, yesterday, a few days ago, a few weeks ago. But the fact remains that all of us, me included, have been very guilty of falling prey to this phrase, I can't. What happens when you say I can't? Is it as innocuous as it seems? Is it as insignificant? When you say I can't, all you're simply doing is that you are on the receiving end of your own handiwork. You're conditioning your own mind to oppose rather than to accept. Now, I've always been fascinated by the human mind. If you put two or more individuals and you expose them to the same environment, you expose them to the exact same factors, you'll find that no two individuals will behave or react in the exact same manner. And that's what I find very, very intriguing. Because everyone's mind is so different, right? I mean, it's as simple as you want, or you can complicate it as much as you want. So it can be as simple or as complex, but at the end of the day, it is you as an individual who will drive that process. So that's what I find very, very fascinating. As human beings, we're the most evolved species. And we can actually achieve anything that we set our mind to, provided the intent. The intent has to be there. Then, of course, things are achievable. I don't know how many of you are aware that the human mind, in all its vastness, we as human beings utilize only about, say, 7 to 8% of our actual brain power. Only about 7 to 8%. The rest is untapped. It's unutilized. Now, there are techniques where one can tap this mind matter that is actually going to waste if you're not using it, on a daily basis. But I'm not going to refer to that here today because that's more like an advanced course. And we're going to stick to the basics. Let's first look at the foundation, because there's no point trying to reach for the stars and trying to aim for the sky when you can't even get up and stand on your own 2 feet. So we'll keep it simple, and we'll look at the foundation. Now, talking about the human mind, what happens when you say, I can't? Let's try and understand that. If we look at the behavior of children versus that of adults, you'll find that there's a vast differentiation. Children just go for whatever they want to do and whatever they're told. In fact, it's more so about what it is that they want to do rather than what they're told. But they keep it very simple, right? If they want to perform a task, they just perform that task. They don't think about anything else. They speak their mind. There are no filters in place. Now, as we tend to grow up, that's when things start to get complicated. They start to get a little complex. Because what happens is that we start to think. We start to question. We get into this entire play of but, what if? Can I? I can't. Maybe. I don't know. Okay, let's not. So what you're doing is, it's okay to question. It's absolutely fine to question a task. But if you get stuck in this question and this deliberation, and you're not able to brush it aside, that's when the problem arises. Because the second you say, I can't, what you're doing is you're not even allowing yourself the opportunity to explore. I'll give you an example. For example, if I have to walk from point A to point B, it's very simple, right? I just have to make those few steps from point A to point B. That's what a child would do. Tell a child to walk from one point to the other, the child will walk. That's it, no questions asked. But the same question is posed to an adult. I'll think, I'll question, I'll wonder. First thing I'll ask is why? Why do I need to cross? Why do I need to go from point A to point B? Fine, even if that question's answered, how do I cross? Should I walk diagonal? Should it be a profile? What will happen? Maybe I can't. Maybe my feet will hurt. So what you've done is you've already gone and complicated a very, very simple task that you were given. A very simple task at hand, you've ignored it, and you've got caught up in the peripherals. The second you do that, you've completely shut yourself off. I'm known as a former Miss India, so there's no way that I'm not going to bring that up. I'd like to reflect particularly on the time when I was mulling applying for the Miss India. I had already won a lot of local pageants, and therefore I was confident. There was no stage fright. There was no fright of public speaking as well. But I was thinking of applying for the Miss India. That was, and it still is, one of the most coveted titles that a girl can win. So for me, there was this momentary self-doubt, slight hesitation, as a bit tentative. Can I? I'm not sure. So that's one thing that happened. The second thing that happened was that at that point, everyone around me was very encouraging. They were very supportive. I had the confidence of everyone. Consequently, the third thing that happened was a realization of that moment and where I was. Fortunately for me, it was very slight. This hesitation wasn't huge. But it could have become huge. It could have become life-altering. But it didn't, because in that moment, I seized that moment of self-doubt. And I told myself, there's a certain way that I'm perceiving myself. I know I have the confidence. I know I can do it. But yet I'm trying to hold myself back. While simultaneously, the world is perceiving me in a completely different manner. There isn't even one individual who approached me and said, I don't think you can, you shouldn't. There wasn't even a single soul who went against the grain. So it is in this very moment that I sat down, I analyzed what was going around me, and I told myself that even if it is a slight hesitation, that's all it is. It can't define me. I can't allow it to define me. So I brushed it off and I moved on. And I won the Miss India, and which is why I'm also standing here and speaking to all of you here today. It is because of that one moment where I told myself, and I made that mental switch from a maybe I can't, to I can. And that's precisely what I'm wanting to convey to all of you as well. A lot of times, people are very dismissive of self-doubt or even hesitancy because, one thinks it's fairly insignificant. So one can just ignore it and move on. But herein lies the trap, because the human mind, it is extremely potent, extremely powerful, but it's also extremely adaptable. So you can mold it and shape it the way you want. And most often than not, it's not even a conscious realization of what we're doing and the way we're conditioning our mind to perceive ourselves as well as the world at large. So if you keep telling yourself repeatedly that I can't, and it could be for a host of reasons. Either you're hiding behind excuses, either you just want to be in your own comfort zone, or you just think you can't. But by doing so, by repeatedly doing so, you are conditioning your own mind to oppose, not to accept, and fall prey to a pattern. So it's not just one isolated incident, because your life is a series of isolated incidents put together. So that one moment is actually not insignificant. It actually carries a lot of weight. So don't let that momentary doubt transform itself into a habit, into a pattern, and then into a lifestyle. Because one fine day, you'll just wake up and you realize, how did I reach here? There will be this moment of stagnancy. And one day you'll just wake up and say, how did I reach here? This is not me. But that's precisely what you have done to yourself repeatedly by conditioning your mind, by repeatedly mutating your behavior to suit someone else's expectations and not your own. Human beings, as human beings, we always have our strengths, we have our flaws. That's going to remain, but focus on your strengths rather than your flaws or your weaknesses. What is it that drives the I Cant Syndrome? Why do we often tend to tell ourselves, why has it become this go-to phrase for everyone? It's a mix of external stimuli, insecurities, which are not magically going to vanish. And it's also fear. Fear is one of the greatest contributory factors by which you hold yourself back. And very simply put, fear is something you don't understand. I will fear something that I don't understand, that I can't rationalize, that I can't wrap my head around. And we'll all have those moments. We'll all have them at some point of time in our lives. But the trick, this mental switch that I'm talking about, the trick is to not allow this fear to become overwhelming and overpowering so that it drives your life. We all have struggles, we all have hardships. Life isn't a bed of roses. It's not a bed of roses for anyone, and it's nothing relative. It isn't a bed of roses for anyone. But the ones who succeed, the ones who are victorious, they're the ones who make this switch, who try not to get caught in the peripherals and about what the world is thinking about them. They just focus on themselves and just move ahead. One of the key aspects of self-growth and discovery, besides telling yourself that you can, even if you can't, I could. At least give yourself that opportunity. Give yourself that opportunity to explore. So in addition to saying I can, or even I could, you need to set realistic goals for yourself. And let me give you an example. If someone tells me to move 5 tons of weight, no matter how much I tell myself I can move that amount of weight, it is physically impossible for me to do so. So it's very important that whatever goals you set for yourself, make sure that they're realistic. And in those moments of vacillation, when you're vacillating between I can or I can't, or I could, maybe not, and if and but, just believe in yourself. It's as simple as that. But that's what this mental switch will do. Just hold on. Nothing is impossible if you set your mind to it. And just hold on and commit. Whenever you make that decision, whenever you're making that mental switch from I can't to I can or I could, just hold on, stick with it. And then just commit. And it will see you through. Because at the end of the day, like I was giving you the example earlier of, from point A to point B, if I have to move from one point to the other, I don't know what's at at the other point of B, right? It could be a film contract, it could be a scholarship, it could be a lottery, it could be a holiday, it could be a car, it could be anything. But I won't know unless I make that effort to move from point A to point B. And that's possible only when I make that mental switch. And it's very, very simple. I know this might sound like motivational parlance, but this is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. And it's definitely an idea worth sharing. And isn't that what TED stands for? So if you view the world with my lens, if you view the world with I can or I could, life surely will be beautiful. Thank you.